Yeehaw. Okay, did we start here? Do we start here? Do we know who's controlling the weather? Yes. Desktop audio. Yo, Alex. Oh, there it is. Sorry. Hold on. I'm in my own background. Yeehaw. Yeehaw. You get the yeehaw twice. That's fun. All right. Clearly still trying to work things out on my end. Thanks for being here. Still trying to experiment with timing and what have you. So today was, get it done. I feel like I'm loud. Let me know about the audio. Obviously, still rocking the air conditioner. We're not out of that yet. This isn't the one I want, though. So I ran through Grok, and I asked Grok to make us some pictures of what it would look like if the Tower of Babel was controlling the weather. Because there you go. If you're wondering who's controlling the weather, it's clearly the Tower of Babel. Don't we all know this by now? This is in jest, just in case the internet police are listening. I thought this sort of, what do you call that, steampunk kind of vibe. This is the one I ended up using for the thumbnail, so I'm trying to pass the Grim Grizz test. I'm trying to deliver on the thumbnail and title. Still using Twitter or X or whatever it's called to try and manage my thoughts here. So thank you guys for, there we go. That's better. I thought this was a good one. Seems very, very fitting, very Tower of Babel, controlling the weather. I don't know. That was just my, I'm sitting up. I'm thinking through what am I going to do for the live stream, and my goodness, does this hurricane look strange? I was just looking at it and going, I feel like that bad boy, it just doesn't look like a hurricane. I mean, not that I spend a whole lot of time looking at hurricanes, but it just doesn't look like I would expect. Hey, Alex, since you're hanging out, is there a delay? I need to know if I have this camera set up. Is my audio and video off? Because I was noticing, I got a new camera. Shout out to my buddy Scott. And I was noticing that, at least in the recording, my audio was delayed. So I'm going to open that in a floating window. I'm going to minimize that. I actually have a wee bit of an outline, but as per usual, I'm still kind of clicking around. Okay, no delay. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm, again, sort of working with some new tech here. And then that, I think the next thing I will do is to actually paint this room. The color of this room has driven me nuts for 2 years now, or a year and a half now. And shout out to you guys for sponsoring the live stream, for memberships and stuff like that, because I'm going to use a little bit of that. I'm going to paint the room. The camera actually was donated to us, so there you go. The next thing is I am looking for a microphone. And shout out to Upcycle. He's a big supporter of this podcast and the live streams. I appreciate Ups and everybody in the community. But one thing, and it feels kind of weird, but I'm looking for a microphone that can handle my voice, if that makes sense. Like, I've always been kind of self-conscious about my voice, and it does have like that. It's funny, you learn. I didn't know this was a thing before I started talking into a microphone and talking to a camera, but there's a term for what is going on in my voice. And I can't think of it right now. Vocal fry. And I don't try to do it, but I need a microphone that maybe could help smooth that out. Okay, so Tower of Babel. So there you go. That's a little, I think I'm done clicking around. I think I'm done kind of jabbering. But man, again, as a person who does not watch hurricanes for a living, my thought was Matthew 24 vibes. And I'll pull that up. I guess we're here. This is, probably familiar to people who are into to Jesus's words. But he just kind of talks about the end, what it's going to look like. They're coming out of the temple. And I'll recap. I did an impromptu live stream on Saturday with some thoughts. I really am sort of adjusting my view of how Jesus handled the religious leaders of his day, and trying to kind of understand the beef there. There's definitely some beef. Hit the like button, nerds. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate you guys being here. Again, different time, still Tuesday. Tuesday is my goal each week to be live once on a Tuesday. If I can't make Tuesday, I'll bump it to Wednesday. And so far, 8:15 has worked for me, but I'm also trying this kind of 6 o'clock. It gives me a little bit of time to eat dinner with my family. But then I'm not up super late. And then my wife has one more day where I'm not kind of disappeared. James, welcome back. Yeah, you mean kind of the beef between Jesus and the religious leaders. I mean, it feels that way, right? I mean, Trump was for October 7th, did sort of this, it was a Jewish sort of prayer time, or remembrance, but then when he was back in Butler, he was doing the Catholic nod. So there's all kinds of sort of religious forces going on out there. But, Jesus is kind of talking about that. His disciples are admiring the temple. Not one stone here will be left upon another, which will not be torn down. And so later on, he was sitting in the Mount of Olives, and his disciples came to him privately. I'll buff this up a little bit. Saying, "Tell us, when will all these things happen? What will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?" This is an interesting word, isn't it? I'm trying to remember the sign of your... I think there's another Bible translation that has this as the consummation. What will be the sign of your sort of inauguration, your consummation? Maybe I'll look that up and get back to you guys, but I wonder what the range here. No, maybe I'm thinking of a different passage. Okay. Jesus answers Septuagint, "See that no one misleads you, for many will come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and will mislead many. You will be hearing of wars and rumors of wars." This is why I was thinking about it. "See that you're not frightened, for those things must take place, but that is not yet the end. For nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom, and in various places there will be famines and earthquakes." Now we're talking about a hurricane, but I think that's kind of the idea, is there's going to be natural forces going on that are just going to look weird. Yeah, it'll look weird. Sorry, I will catch up on chat here in a second. They will deliver you into the tribulation. This whole chapter, the beginnings of birth pains is the one that I go to, and I know we all kind of come at this. Everybody has kind of their sort of eschatology. I have the 10 virgins parable. That's my sort of eschatological vision. There were 5 who were foolish, 5 who were wise. The wise ones prepared for the bridegroom's delay, and they lived with the immediacy of the bridegroom. They were living in an anticipation of the bridegroom, but they also understood that there was preparation to be made for the delay of the bridegroom. And so that's what we're going to get into a little bit. It's a little bit of an attacking the darkness stream, but I couldn't find my clip. I couldn't find the attacking the darkness clip, so I failed. I'm sorry. I thought that the fact that they named this thing Milton, the video could not be played. Okay, the fact that they named this one Milton was a little too on the nose for me. I mean, Paradise Lost, right? Are we there? Are we, you know, um, maybe. Um, and then there's a freaking, isn't there one hitting France? Let me see if I have that. Nope. Yeah. And then there's another one that's going to go up into Europe apparently, or develop. It's just wild, right? It's a wild time to be alive. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, obviously for all of our friends out in Florida, in that part of the country, God be with you. We're praying for you guys. Hopefully you're sheltered. I know a few people who've been giving updates on Twitter and stuff like that. So thank you. It's good to know that you guys are okay. I know we're sort of leading up to it, but yeah. Within 10 years, the world will not have enough phosphorus to support the present state of food. One of my side hobbies is actually sustainable agriculture, a little bit homesteading. And you're touching on something there. I feel like there's a regenerative source of phosphorus, though, that I know plants can grab nitrogen out of the air. Phosphorus is another one, though. Yeah, it's gonna be wild. We need to stack our functions. I actually have another YouTube channel called Wildberry Goods. It's a project that I will be doing hopefully in the future, but as we get a little bit more sustainable stuff going on our little slice of land. Yeah, so that was the joke, but it is kind of true. And the nations that control phosphorus: Morocco, South Korea, Mongolia. Why does Florida have so much political power? Orlando, phosphorus. Okay, so James, you're gonna have to maybe clue me in a little bit more on the phosphorus connection there. As far as political power, I guess maybe that's where they're getting it. That would be, I mean, this is kind of jumping, but one of the things I want to do at the end is talk about where we're going to go. I usually save that to the end, but Joe Rogan just did a conversation with, what are their names? Callie and Casey Means.
Please step out.
So I will be doing something with this this week. I don't know exactly what, but I listened to their Tucker Carlson interview and I was fascinated by some of the stuff that they talk about. It really is a holistic. You know, they're talking about how we as people. I'm trying to get a good clip here. You know, we as people. We're created, we're designed to, I mean, this is something, but we're designed to like use energy. And one of her points is that because the environment and because our food is so poisonous, our metabolism, our metabolic functions are breaking down. And so we're converting less nutrients into energy and essentially living half lives. We're living with less energy than we would have. So the spiritual connection there, and then the sort of the Imago Dei, the fact that God has created us in His image, and that fact that I mean that in the book of Revelation, the light comes from the middle of the city, right? There's no sun anymore because the light is Christ, and essentially the sun that we orbit, like sends us light, right? And then plants convert that, you know, and then we eat the plants, or we eat the animals that eat the plants, and essentially they've converted light into, they've stored energy, they've stored that light energy in their cells, and then our metabolic processes are designed to break that down and absorb it, and that's what gives us energy and sustains life. And so even though she's an MD, you know, she's talking about this connection, and I really appreciate that because I think in our modern world we think far too much about the biological because we're far too engrossed in the material. But we are consciousness, we are mind, we are body, and we are spirit, we're breath, right? And so I think that is that's part of the conversation that needs to be had, as far as like, how do we go forward from here? Like, it does seem like we are, well, and I guess, Jesus' words here are, do not be afraid and don't let anybody mislead you. No one frightens you, right? Don't be frightened. But I think we need to be good stewards of the earth and stewards of that. I think about that. I have small kids, and so I'm like, okay, how do we live healthy lives and live in harmony with the way God has created us, and not just fall into line with what seems like a Babel type of program. If I'm completely honest, it seems very sort of anti-human, Babel-like, going back to our intro here. I've said this in the past. It's like I can't quite put my finger on what religion it is, but I know that their sacrament is death, and that's what it seems like. I don't want to participate in that sacrament. I want to. Yeah. So phosphorus for fertilizer. So there's a lot of phosphorus in Florida, I guess is the point. There's a lot of phosphorus on Mars. That's why Elon Musk wants to go to Mars. You know what? Maybe there's phosphorus at the bottom of the ocean, man. That could be the spot. So there's that. Now, where do we go from here? It was something I asked, and I think that takes me kind of to this next piece. What I try to do sometimes is I try to do a recap of my week, sort of pick up the pieces where they left off. And I did this. I guess I'll recap this Helene Aftermath one, since we're kind of preparing for the next one. Okay, I'm going to get distracted by all that stuff. And point out that, and I guess maybe I just want to make this point a little bit. I want to put more emphasis on this point, that even good government isn't going to be able to supply all that we need. And I'm an advocate for good government. I'm not advocating for sort of Christian nationalism. I'll unpack that a little bit more, but essentially I feel like we are meant to be an outpost of the kingdom of God. And I think what I'm seeing in Asheville and these places is a little bit of that. It definitely seems like the church has come together. The church has met the needs of the community, as it should, right? So I'm going to play a clip of myself. I'm even wearing the same shirt, which feels a little weird. Anyway. And I just want to like kind of restate this with a little bit more emphasis. So take it away. I've done other podcasts on the fall of nations, and how secular society cannot catch up with the increased pressure. Over time, pressure increases, they collapse, Rome collapsed, etc., etc. And yet the kingdom of God does not collapse. The government might even be failing at meeting sort of the base level material needs of people living through this trauma. But they're not designed even then to meet the spiritual and emotional needs of people. The church is. So I don't know where we go from here, but is it possible that the church needs to sort of wake up and take responsibility for our neighborhoods, for our communities? Like, be very intentional about how we respond, and to other people, maybe being very intentional about how you can support those churches so that the people of God have the resources to do the kingdom work that is missing, so that there's not a vacuum there for the city of man to come in and pretend like they can fill the need, but ultimately they can't. Yeah. Um, man. I feel like we have come through that. I think that we lived in times where it seemed like the function of the church was somewhat unnecessary. Like life was good and church became, and that's not really true. Like saying that life is good, it is not really. There's always struggle. Even if you go back to like the Andy Griffith show, right? Like oh yeah, Mayberry and all this, and life was if we could just go back there, life would be better. It's like no, people were murdered even back then. Like humanity has a problem. The soul of humanity is sick. It doesn't really matter what time period you're in. I mean, of course, you could go back even further, and it becomes very, very barbaric. Um, but for whatever reason, the church sort of did take a side role to maybe some of the things that seemed more functional within our society, um, and kind of, and I don't want to be too harsh on the church. I love the church. I work in ministry, and I love the people of God. And so what I'm speaking about is more maybe sort of the institutional church, or the whatever you want to call, however you want to make that distinction. I think I made the distinction between like the visible and the invisible church. The visible church being sort of the institutional church that really did kind of give up ground. You can think of Leslie Newbegin's book. I can't think of the name of it right now, but he really did say that we gave up ground in culture, and we by we he meant the church gave up ground in culture and just gave it up to other institutions, because it seemed like, at least at the time, those institutions were somewhat functional. Entertainment wasn't that bad, government seemed to be functional and healthy. The school system seemed to be functional and healthy. The medical system seemed to be functional and healthy. Our climate seemed to be, the earth wasn't, convulsing, and all those things. And so the church kind of maybe lost that sense of urgency that we needed to be kingdom people, that we are exiles in this world. We are Daniel in Babylon, and yet our command is still to be fruitful, to be stewards of the promise that God has given us. And I wonder now if stuff like this isn't just waking us up. I have heard about a lot of people getting baptized in and around this sort of post hurricane in North Carolina, Tennessee area, and I've heard a lot that the church sort of showed up to do kingdom things, and that is encouraging. It's sad, obviously, that it took a moment of trauma, that it took something like this. But now it's like, okay, if and when good government becomes bad government, and when bad government abandons its people, and I'm not saying that that's exactly what happened. I know it's more nuanced than that. It's the church that needs to be there. But the church needed to be there all along, because even good government isn't going to give the people everything that they need to heal through trauma, to bridge barriers between communities. I mean, that's essentially the church has done that since it was created by the Spirit, right? It brings together the nations, and it brings together people of different communities, and people live self-sacrificially around one another. And I think that would be my encouragement, is that the church needs to be able to risk more and live self-sacrificially and not assume just one more facet of society, if that makes sense, like another institution. It needs to be truly an outpost of the kingdom of God. And so, sorry, I'm just sort of looking. I'm again trying to keep track of myself here with Twitter. And I thought, Jordan Hall was one of the people that I thought about as soon as I heard where the hurricane was moving, and a few others from our community. I've got friends that live north of this, and friends that live a little bit west, and I heard from those people, but for a while there, I hadn't heard from Jordan Hall. And not that Jordan Hall doesn't know me. We don't know each other, but I just follow his work online, I guess, is what you say. So it's like, has anybody heard of from Jordan Hall? Like, is everything okay over there? I'm like, I'm listening and learning. I'm like, I think his area got hit really hard. And I pointed that out in the podcast, that it was the area around Jordan Hall, which just so happened to be the same area that this Excel College is in, which just so happened to be the same area that the Duck Dynasty guys had apparently have a connection at a church there. So it's like this whole area. So my question was, I guess it's this Swan.Church, if you're interested in looking them up, and continuing to support them, because it's gonna be months, years, I think, before they really dig out. I don't know. And so I was sort of waiting to, hey, what's going on with Jordan Hall? Now, he posted an update that they had power. I had replied with, I bet that's a surreal feeling, but really glad you guys are recovering. Surreal is sitting on the porch with no power, water, or internet, and seeing an Amazon truck drive by with a helicopter flying overhead every 5 minutes for ambience. And I pointed this out, which then takes me down kind of a weird rabbit hole. Not only is that surreal, sitting on your porch, and having all that, but the fact that there's a book written about this. If you want to look up 1 second after, gosh, that's so bright. This is why I do things on Twitter and with Logos, is this, the brightness of it blows me away. But this book was written about the area around Asheville after being hit by an EMP, and the community coming together to survive. It's so weird that the book is set in the same area as this hurricane. And it seems like the people around here have been talking about, turns out, different flavors of apocalypse. This is Jordan played differently. In this version of the story, the reservoir is lost and the cars work, at least after 3 days when gas starts coming back. They start using Volkswagens and cars with mechanical ignitions because all the electric stuff has been wiped out. Which then brought me to this clip from Jonathan Pajot. And the question that I have is the word apocalypse means that something is being revealed, right? So there's a revelation going on, and is the church being revealed for who she is, the bride of Christ? Is she being transformed? And of course the answer is yes. Like, I think Jesus tells us that there's passages that say the bride has prepared herself. There's passages that indicate that Jesus is preparing his bride, but there's a transformation going on in the church. And Paul Vanderklay pointed this out, and I've kind of talked about it a little bit, but just the idea of the communion of the saints is fascinating to me right now. But what's really freaking strange is that, I guess I'll play this clip from Jonathan Pajot, and then we can discuss it. It's a short clip. Let me see if I can. I
think that we have to take the images of fiction very seriously and not take them as just fun stories or just the human fears gone astray, but really as as attempts to project into the future, attempts to project into imaginary space things that we haven't grasped with yet. So those images are important to think about.
Yeah,
I
the
think that we have to
stories are
take
worth.
the images of fiction very seriously and not take them as just fun stories or
Yeah, the images of fiction. Okay, okay. So he's talking about. He's actually talking about like Frankenstein and this whole podcast was sort of on the sort of Antichrist and all of that and some of those images and why these stories keep popping up. These sort of Frankenstein monsters and the AI and all that. But it's really weird that you can find a story that deals with a disaster in Asheville, North Carolina, that talks about a community coming together. Now, it's not a Christian book or anything like that. It doesn't deal with really the church, as far as I know. I could be mistaken. I feel like there is one point where he like starts to pray or something like that. But the fact that we essentially live in a story. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. That God is the author of this life, right? God is the author. We live in a story, and these the human consciousness attempts to predict the future by telling stories, or the human consciousness tells stories in a way of participating with the story that we're in. And then you see these things emerge, like a book that sort of predicts the future almost. And it's not quite right, but there's this sort of prophetic imagination that Jonathan Peugeot is talking about. And so he says we really do need to take stories seriously.
or just the human fear has gone astray, but really as attempts to project into the future, attempts to project into imaginary space things that we haven't grasped with yet. So
and attempts to project into imaginary space the things that we haven't grasped yet, though. But the things that we sense or we feel or we anticipate, we know are coming. I mean, again, maybe this is kind of parable of the 10 virgins, like the bridegroom is coming. We don't necessarily see him, but we live with this anticipation. Sometimes in the church, we talk about the fact that the kingdom of God is already but not yet, and we live in this tension, and it's essentially, and I'm kind of like simplifying things, but it's like, to me, it's a tension between Jesus's advent and his second coming. Like, he came, he lived, he died, he rose again, he ascended into heaven, and now we're in that process of birth pains, and we know that something's up. We know that something's up, but we don't have a full vision. Why is communion of the saints important? Why would that be a season of the church that we need to talk about? Because that sort of projecting your imagination into future space, or sort of this prophetic imagination that Jonathan is talking about, if you live in isolation, that prophetic imagination could drive you crazy. I mean, like, you see it today, like people are just going down conspiracy craziness, right? And I kind of have that inkling, right? That's why I need community. And then you have a shared consciousness. You have people sharing their ideas with you. And what happens then is like the great conversation in classical works. The things that ring true endure. The things that ring true stay at the surface and they don't wash away, right? The things that are made up, the things that are based out of fear, to go back to Jesus's words here, the things that are based out of fear or just my own wild imagination won't endure the test of the communion of the saints. The communion of the saints will listen to each other, and we will we'll process and filter and think through from our own perspective how true what each other is saying, and we'll be able to, in a sense, I mean, it's like one big dialogue. It's like one big sort of John Vervaeke said, he's what did he say? He was talking about his time as a Christian, and he said, although he's not necessarily a follower of Jesus, he's always felt like he's a follower of the Logos. So, okay. Yeah, it is a condition of the heart. And to that point, let's go to this other, like, I posted a few videos. Okay, so that was the, no, okay, where's my, there it is. That was my thing. I did 2 kind of shorter videos this week, so no true podcast episode. None of these will go up on the audio version. I just feel like they're short enough that I think they just live as video podcasts. Actually, it looks like it did. Oh, this one is a clip from the live stream, I think. And so to that point, and I'm sorry, Thakaifa. I'm gonna say your name wrong, but I feel like I don't feel like I've seen you in the chat before. So hey, what's up? Thanks for the comment. That was the point about the abortion thing. I mean, I've said this before. Politics is downstream of theology. Culture is downstream of theology. What comes in your mind when you think about God is the most important thing about you, because it will determine how you act in this world, how you live. Going back to the Joe Rogan, and I knew as soon as I closed that tab, I would want to reference it again. But going back to the Joe Rogan podcast, and I will make something of it. I forget what I was going to say, but anyway, we're meant to live life, I guess. We're meant to be stewards of life. And though I'm not trying to be political, I am trying to point out that there's not really a clear dividing line between theology and politics. Theology is, if Christians, they do this thing where it's like, my relationship with God, that's the horizontal, vertical, and then the horizontal one is my relationship to other people. Okay, so that's theology, and that's politics. Theology is me and God, or us and God, going back to communion of the saints. And then politics is people. How do people interact? So there's not really a... now, of course, in our sort of modern culture, of course, people are going to think... they're going to struggle, like, why would a theology podcast be talking about politics? But ultimately, it's to this point, it's a matter of the heart. You cannot legislate, and again, even good government. What would good government do in a situation like we have today? I don't know who to. I'm torn. Like, it's funny. I posted this. Let me see if I can get to some of the comments. I thought they were. It seems that some of these comments, it was kind of like, well, what other option would Christians have? And I thought, well, there's more than just right and left. There's more than just Republican and Democrat. The solution goes beyond that. But some of the comments, and it was good. I mean, I think these videos are good. They're provocative. It gets people talking. That's part of the point of this podcast, is I want to engage in dialogue. I was going to try to find the comment that's just said, I just got a lot of people saying, like, no, he's not. Is Trump losing Christians on the abortion issue? No, he's not. I'm like, well, I guess you didn't listen to the podcast, because there are Christian people talking about how he's losing them. And that's okay. Like, I'm not trying to be anti-Trump or anything. I'm just saying, like, he might be losing Christians on this. But it's a matter of the heart. Does the church, the bride, the virgin have enough oil? I think so. Well, okay. Alex, man. Okay, there's a whole nother thing about the oil for the lamps, and it's in Revelation. It's actually right in the beginning of Revelation, and I could break that down for you. But my answer is yes. What is the oil in the lamps? What does God use? What does God burn to light the flame of the church? Didn't you notice while you lit up the sky, your lamp ran dry? Is that lyrics to a song, Evan? Well, welcome in, everybody. Good to see you guys. I hope everybody's doing well, man. I'm in sort of monologue world, which is sort of unfortunate because my throat is, I need like a voice coach or something like that. I need to like figure out how to talk for an hour without like completely losing it. Okay, this was the one. This was losing Christians. And they're going where? To the left? I don't think so, brother. And so it was like, I think that Christians will turn to Jesus. Now, that doesn't mean we just sort of throw up our hands and pray that everything works better. But again, the point is, I'm not looking for I'm not looking for government to solve the issue that I have with abortion. The issue that I have with abortion is I don't think it preserves life. And as I am not the creator of life, and so I don't meddle in that. God can do what God wants to do. God is the creator, okay? But I'm not God. And if we can't even decide when life begins, I mean, I guess we can. I mean, ultimately, life does begin. I mean, the cells, have life or whatever. And when does the unborn become a person? And we can't answer that. And because we can't, the chances are it is a person. I think there's a good likelihood there. And so if it's even possible, and I won't rehash the whole sort of argument, but if it's even possible that is a human life, then good grief. So that's my issue that I have with abortion. I'm not looking to some political candidate to try to solve that for me. The person that needs to solve that issue is the creator, who is not far off and withdrawn from this problem. He feels it just as much as anybody. The most, fervent anti-abortion person could feel it. But he's also done something about it. What's up, Ups? Good to see you. Now we get to okay. See, what happens is Ups comes in, he drops 5 gifted. Thank you, and then all the lurkers get exposed. I don't know, McMo, if you guys are all just kind of hanging out, but yeah, let me know your thoughts on this, because again, like I said, I'm kind of in monologue world. I appreciate you, Ups. I gave you a shout out early on in the podcast. I said I need to get some paint for my office backdrop here. Even some of my maps are falling off the wall. But I said that you guys that support this channel, I mean, you're making stuff like that possible. Because, if I didn't have that, I would just let it be whatever nasty color that is. So thank you, my friend. Thank you. And that's kind of the point again. I don't need to belabor the whole thing, but good government is good, but we don't need to sit here and wait for good government to solve a problem that good government isn't even designed to solve. Like, it's not within the scope of a political system to work on the heart the way the person of Christ can. That's what we're driving at, and going all the way back to Jordan Hall, this sort of dialogue with Jordan Hall. It's like that the church needs to show up and care for people who are in trauma. And I think that definitely extends to the abortion question. Yeah, Afriel gets to stay a lurker. Oh wait, dang it. Yeah. So that was that. Okay, let me find my notes. Oh man. Oh, did you guys see this? This is gonna be a good one. The dark side of fairy tales. I think I'm skipping my notes here. No, I think I'm good. I talked about how the kingdom needs to be an outpost. We're not necessarily looking. We are in Babel, but we are an outpost. I think that's the point. And again, that kind of comes up for me in this abortion question. It's like, yeah, I'm not expecting people whose hearts have not been touched by the person of Jesus to act like people who have been touched by the person of Jesus. I can't mandate that for people. We need the Spirit of God to work in the lives of people. Shout out to Hannah Claire Brimelow, by the way. I listened to Timcast. If you guys have, I don't actually, no offense, Tim. I think Tim is a good person. I don't tend to like listening to Tim, but I do like listening to his guests. And Hannah Claire has been one of the co-hosts, and she's actually just like, I feel like she's said some really really great stuff. So shout out to those guys over there. And shout out to Tim for putting it all together, of course. Even though, like, I kind of listen to the other people more. So, Mandy, hey. Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Ups. I feel like there's other live streams going on, so thank you guys for coming over and hanging out. I know there's a lot going on in the world. I don't really have like a hurricane update. I just felt like maybe, like I said, it was just sort of Matthew 24 vibes. Everybody's talking about, and what's funny is, I mean, the Tower of Babel. You read back into Genesis, and it's like it was a tower of technology. So, what that technology, what it was that they were doing there. Of course, I think it was ritualistic. I think there was a religion at its core, but there was some kind of technology there, because God says, man, what are they going to be able to come up with? Now, again, I'll say this again. It's like, I don't quite know what religion that is, but clearly their sacrament is death. And so we need to be people that are not afraid, like Jesus says. Yeah, when Seamus dipped, I feel the same way. Okay, so Seamus is great. And then who else? I do feel like Hannah Claire kind of fills that void a little bit. And then I guess, who I do like Phil Labonte. Like that guy, I don't agree with everything. I don't agree with everything anybody says, but I feel like, he's just got some good takes every once in a while. They're more like old toys scattered in hidden corners of the room, gathering crypto lint. Chad with the poetry. My head cannon? Gosh, my boomer eyes, man, I'm working. For the Tower of Babel was that the technology made it difficult for them to communicate, not God. Oh. Corporate gobbledygook. This is good. Okay, wait. Because who points this out? Gosh, I feel like there's going back. That brings us to kind of the dystopian prophetic imagination there. And they blamed God. God sort of scattered. Well, yeah, and I would say, like, as a, I think God is in sovereign control of the whole thing. So he, if they invented something that created confusion, God essentially sort of ordained it or whatever. So let's be not frightened. I'm here for the communion of the saints and what's next. Yes, Chad pointed out, I think it's salvation. I think salvation is next, right? I thought I had it up. I thought I had the Apostles' Creed up, but I don't. Yeah, that's what I was saying. Yeah, Evan, that's kind of what I was saying. It's sort of like, it could be both. God sort of foreordained it, allowing the technology to sort of scatter them or confuse them. Gobbledygook, though. But what book is that from? Yeah, Forgiveness of the Sins. Yeah, thank you, Chad. Gobbledygook is an actual word that an author came up with to describe this, but I'm spacing out. Anyway, I think you might be onto something there. So this has been a little bit of a Pajot stream. We talked about his reference to how stories and how dystopian novels sort of project our imagination into the future as a way of for us to try to grasp with kind of the unknown. But for me, and Peugeot doesn't say this, I think it's also a bit of a sensitivity that we have that we're actually participating in a story. He went on with Ben Shapiro to talk about this, and I thought it was really good. And again, I think that stories don't sleep on the power of story. I guess that's what I'll say. This is something I'm going to give a lot of thought to coming up. We've always, it's something that sets humans apart, right? That we tell stories. I mean, other animals communicate at a base level. Humans project their imagination into this imaginal world, right? They project themselves into an imaginal world. And there's a passage in scripture, and I think it's 1 John 2:3, or it's 2 John 3:1 or something like that. Let me see if I can find it. But it's just so interesting because he says, when you see me, you will be like me. I think it's 2:3. Oh, dang, 3:2. 1:3:2. 1 John 3:2. Beloved, now we are children of God, and it has not yet appeared what we will be. Okay, we will be transformed, but exactly how? How? Well, we know that when he appears, we will be like him. You see that? So we will be transformed, and we will be like him. Why? Because we see him just as he is. We see him. Now, I think this is in reality. I think we will see him, right? And we will be transformed. But there is something to the fact that we can project our imagination there, and we can, in a sense, we can turn our attention to Jesus even now because of the Spirit of God, because of the way God has made us as human beings, and our imagination, our consciousness can do this thing, and in a way we can behold him, and we will be like him. Now, what's interesting is that another thing takes place, and I'll just go back to this. It's like when we behold false gods, we become like them as well. Proverbs, Psalms talks about this, right? Those who make them become like them, right? They have mouths, but they don't talk. They have ears, but they don't hear. They have eyes, but they don't see. And those who make them will become like them. When you worship an idol, you become like an idol. And I should have never closed this JRE tab. I'm kicking myself because she'll talk about this. She talks about God as though God is like a, what's the word? Sort of impersonal. An imperssional God.
Water.
And when God is impersonal, then you sort of become a little bit more impersonal, if that's your image of God. And so again, what comes into our mind when we think about God as the most important thing about us, I think that's because the power of the imagination. That's because when we see him, we will be like him. There's a mimetic transformation going on there. We mimic. Like I see, like children learn to talk because they see their parents talking. They look at your mouth and they watch how your mouth moves, and they can hear the sound, and then they kind of ba ba ba, right? And then they practice, and then they see it again, and that's how we learn. We mimic. We're made that way by our Creator to do that. That's part of our learning process. And so I think that's why Jonathan Peugeot is right. I think that stories are powerful, and I can't wait to dig into this one a little bit more. I don't have the clips. I just listened to it, and I wish I had a clip for you guys. But this beginning part is really good. I'm gonna catch up on chat. Maybe I'll just play the beginning for you guys, and I'll catch up on some chat because I think he kind of starts off pretty good.
In the opening of the Olympics, it wasn't a political statement. It was presented imagistically in story terms with certain cultural elements. And so we try to answer politically, but when you do that, they just say, well, no, you're misunderstanding. And then they start to gaslight and to shift. What we need to learn to do, and that's why I don't talk about politics that much. I talk about stories and I try to tell stories, is because that's the best way to answer. These stories that have been with us for millennia and that kind of uphold our civilization, if we can understand them and then present them again to the world in a way that is clear, then those stories win because they're the true story.
Jonathan Pajot is a French-Canadian.
There you go. There you go. Steve, well, I appreciate you being here all the same, brother. My political egregore video bored me. Well, you can thank Paul Vanderklay for that because I relied on some Paul Vanderklay in that video. So take it up with Paul. Afriel, I just love it. I just, it's brilliant. That's poetry. Chad. Yeah, for now we see through a glass darkly, but then face to face. Gosh, that's so good, man. Yeah, Evan. Yeah. Like right now, and again, that's why we're sort of we're projecting. That's why we need the communion of the saints. And I don't even know that I'm really using that term well. I wanted to ask Paul when he did his live stream. But I deleted Discord off my phone, so I couldn't ask him the question before the live stream ended. But because we're all gonna project in a way that's not quite true. The only person that has an accurate view of reality is God, the Creator. We, as creatures and fallen and finite, have limited view of what reality truly is. And yet God, I think it is important that we understand God as a person and not a force, because we will be transformed into the image of whatever God we project. And bringing people together in this sort of ecumenical community, this communion of the saints, will help us to not become crazy, I think, not become like totally off base, because each one of us individually has kind of a messed up view of the world, so we need each other to refine that view. Of course, we need scripture, we need God's revelation, all that, right? That's all pretty clear too. Ben was with the bachelor pad setup. Okay, that was so funny, right? So they're doing this big, like they got all this money, and they want to have a dialogue, but what do? They have to set him up as a picture. There's a book. There's actually a series of books, and I really need the time to get into this. But the work of Jacques Ellul is sort of fascinating to me. He talks about the humiliation of the word in a society of images, where all we do is we communicate through images. I feel like, I wonder what Jacques Ellul would say about this. You're having a conversation with a TV, man. And then you can think of Plato's cave, right? It's like Ben Shapiro is looking at the image of Jonathan Pajot, and then we're looking at the image of Ben Shapiro looking at the image of Jonathan Pajot. It's freaking Plato's cave all over again. Okay, Chad, do you have beef with Steve or what? Where does this come from? Steve thinks people should be perfect and nice in order to be Christian. Do you guys know each other? I don't know what you mean by Christ was a man who was crucified as a 200-year-old man. Over 200s. Pretty young by biblical standards. Yeah, the oldest. Okay, here's a riddle. Here's a little Bible nerd trivia. The oldest man to ever have lived died before his father. There you go. That's your Bible trivia. The oldest man to ever have lived died before his father. Talking about symbolism there, 2D versus 3D. Yep. Yeah. And again, I wonder if that's where stories, it's interesting, right? What do you do with the Bible passage that says faith comes through hearing the word of God, right? We hear it. We are meant to listen to the story being told by our community. I think I brought this up in one of the other live streams, but I went through a pretty sort of drought period of time in my life where it was really hard for me to read the Bible. And what really carried me through that time in my life was going into worship and hearing other people read the Bible. It's beautiful. We need each other and the world for proper perception, calibration. Yeah. Man, thank you, Alex. If you guys weren't here, we would just be babbling on, and I wouldn't have that. That is a very well said and concise way of what do you call that? Sort of helping me compile my thoughts here. All right, Steve doesn't know Chad. Chad doesn't know Steve. Okay, so you don't believe, yeah, okay. You don't believe that the story of Jesus is symbolic. His words were. Now, and I think this is where we're going to go, and I appreciate that, Steve. When we say symbolic, and when we talk about stories, we don't mean things that are not true. And that, I think, is sort of the modern imagination getting sort of confused by this. That symbols aren't shadows of true things. This world is kind of a shadow of a true thing, and the symbols actually help us to see the world more clearly. To Evan's point earlier, right? We see through a glass dimly or darkly. We look at the world through eyes that are tainted by sin. If we go back to the garden, I mean, essentially, Adam's sin was obviously eating of the fruit, and it was a sin of omission. He allowed Eve to eat the fruit, but there's sort of a preparation. You can see that he was prepared to sin because he didn't tell Eve the right story. He told Eve not to touch the tree. And I'd have to break that down, but essentially God creates Adam, gives him the command. Then God creates Eve. God never restates the command to Eve, so the implication is that Adam was supposed to pass on the command to Eve. But by the time Eve tells the serpent, she adds this thing that they're not supposed to touch the tree. So it was a mismanaging of the story that led to the fall of humanity. And so stories and symbols actually help us. They actually, like, stories can contain more truth than just the facts of the matter. And I was trying to do this game with myself. Try this, and I'd love to get your guys' feedback on this. Just try to communicate to another human being with only the facts. Just the facts. Just give details, right? It's 7:20 on October 8th. The air temperature is 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Oh, see, like, I can give you that, but eventually I'm going to slip into narrative. Eventually I'm going to slip, in order to communicate to you. So I need story to help me. And so we live as though stories, in a way, are sort of more helpful or more true than even just the facts of the matter. So I didn't do a very good job of explaining that, but that's kind of where I come at this. So I don't think, so I think that Jesus is, in a sense, you can think of Jesus as parables. They are symbolic, and yet the truth that he's teaching through that parable is deeper and more profound because it's in a parable, if that makes sense. Being the audience in the basement bar. Haven't read anything from this. Jacques Ellul guy. Yeah, Jacques Ellul. He wrote a book called The Humiliation of the Word. Excuse me. The Humiliation of the Word by the Crucifixion. Okay, so yeah, so if you think about the cross as sort of like an icon or something like that, it's like the Word gets crucified on that. Yeah. And the humiliation of the Word is essentially what we're talking about when we talk about Christ. Afriel, I think, okay, image the convo VR chat with fully rigged VTuber models for Ben and Jonathan. Yes. Okay, I get it. I'm picking up on your thread here. Being the audience in the basement bar, a step above an open mic, I think. Yes. I don't know who the Prophet Hub is. Oh, the explanation of the story of HUD in the Aliyah Salam website is strange. I'm not familiar with that. Which facts? Yeah, whose facts, right? Yep. The selection and the ordering of the facts is narratival. Yeah, it's essentially a narrative. And I love that. That was the yeah, I won't be able to get it, but oh gosh. Martin Shaw, when he was on the interview, talking about how myths tell us more truth than just the facts of the matter. And I really appreciated that. Yeah. Okay, so Ups. The tree of knowledge of good and evil was clearly in the Garden of Eden, but that doesn't mean that the tree of life, which is the Lord Jesus Christ, wasn't also there. I think you're right. I mean, that's why they're kicked out of the garden, right? He says they need to be banished from the garden, and they put the cherubs there to guard it. Otherwise, they would eat of the tree of life. And I think they're always destined to eat of the tree of life. But like you're saying, that's Christ. So it's always meant to point to Christ. Okay. Steve, I'll have to look that up. Thank you. Yeah. Man, I almost wonder if we're always meant to go this direction, right? It's like we can see the Lord's mercy and his justice through the fall, right? We see something of God through the fall, even though, yeah, that's a touchy one. That's a hard one. I appreciate that comment, Ups. Yeah, because again, I'm in the book of Revelation. I'll probably end stream soon. So if you guys have any questions, let me know. But man, the book of Revelation has been just sort of blowing me away. And the tree, there's a tree, right? There's a tree in the middle of the city. So like the city in the book of Revelation, the city that Jesus is building, the leaves of, there's a tree in the middle. Oh, 22-2. Cool. So I never remember the addresses of these things. The river of the water of life. So Revelation 22, we're in the part of Revelation where he's talking about the city. River of water of life, clear as crystal, coming from the throne of God and of the Lamb, and in the middle of its street, on either side of the river, was the tree of life. There it is, bearing 12 kinds of fruit, yielding the fruit every month, and the leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations. No longer any curse, and the throne of God and the Lamb will be in it, and the bondservant will serve him. Yeah. And so that's kind of the this sort of eschatological vision. I mean, we're coming through this this season where it's like the Tower of Babel, man. But ultimately it's the city of God that wins the day, right? Yeah, the myth made fact. Alex, if you've watched the Louis Marcos podcast that I did, I actually had Louis Marcos on the podcast, and he wrote the book, The Myth Made Fact. Am I right about that? I mean, he's using a C.S. Lewis quote, but his book is actually called The Myth Made Fact. That was really good. I really appreciated him coming on the podcast. It's way down there though. I don't know if you've already watched it, but yeah, the true myth. I mean, essentially, again, I think about it like we live in a story. So does the God Allah have beard or lung or hair? I don't believe so. Yeah, it's sort of anthropomorphic language there. Hud and Noah supposedly had the same appearance, similar appearance. Huh. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I don't know enough about Islam to speak on any of that, but yeah, I know that when we talk about God, we often use anthropomorphic language. But in some way, I mean, again, it's not easy, but I would still maintain that God is a person. If that helps. All right. Well, I failed to get any sort of like branding up, so I will just have to say good night to you all, wonderful people. Thank you for being here, and thank you for enduring it. Thank you for enduring my babble. See what I did there? No, but I mean, in all seriousness, hopefully it's encouraging. You guys encourage me. Eventually, I would like to have more conversations, maybe even more live streams. So I don't know. I need to work out StreamYard and all that stuff. But you can look out for this one coming up. I will do something on this. I don't have a title for it yet. And I will do something on the dark side of fairy tales. That one will probably come out first because that's the one I'm excited about. This one, I haven't listened to all of it, so I think I need to give that a little bit more time to cook. And yeah. Oh, I didn't cover the live stream that I did. Thank you guys for hanging out there. I did a real quick live stream from my car. Again, reflecting on, it's sort of a side quest that I'm on as far as, again, I keep bringing up the book of Revelation, and I'm tying that to Joshua and the fact that Joshua brings the people into the promised land. Moses doesn't. Check that out. Give me your thoughts. It's like 10 minutes. So yeah, it was in the car. It was on a Saturday. And I may do more of that. I mean, I enjoyed it. It's fun to just, again, part of this is me filing away my thoughts onto the mystical magical world of the internet. So thank you for participating with that. And I will catch you guys in the next one.